Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
And this is Mike LaPerry, once again subbing in for the great Pete Turner. And we have one hell of an album fight, one huge album fight. Before I say another thing, I'm going to send it over to Phil for our corner call. Phil.
Today's album fight is a 12-round matchup between the Fab Four and a post-punk dance band. In the red corner, tapping into blues, pop, and progressive rock, we have the Beatles with their 11th studio album from 1969, Abbey Road. And their opponent in the blue corner, we have a compilation of 12-inch singles and their respective B-sides from New Order with their album from 1987, Substance. Let's get ready to ramble. Take it away, judges.
Yeah, entertaining as always. And Phil, you're right. This is going to be one huge heavyweight fight. We have returning to the ring, the Beatles Abbey Road, which seems to be just a blender for other albums. And in order for us to come up with something good enough to go up against Abbey Road, what we did was we broke a rule, and we brought in a greatest hits album. This is New Order Substance, which is actually a collection of singles, some of which were never actually released on albums, but it is truly a greatest hits collection. So before I introduce the judges, let's take it over to Richard and see what our pre-fight numbers are telling us. Richard, take it away.
This week's fight is different and unique and weird and fun and kind of awesome in a lot of ways. It was, on the other hand, very difficult to do the pre-fight numbers, mainly because while Abbey Road is a classic album of the Beatles and is available on all formats, Substance is kind of a ghost when it comes to the digital format. This was mainly put out to be in the album / cassette, maybe CD format, and kind of disappeared once it got to digital, so it's hard to score this like we normally do. So instead of having the typical 13 or 14 categories, I was only able to do 11 categories. And it turned out, like I said, kind of weird. Abbey Road got 8 of those categories. Substance got 0. And there were 3 ties. So what does that leave us with as far as pre-fight predictions? Well, I don't think this is going to be a 12-0 win for Abbey Road by any stretch. Mainly because the back third of Abbey Road is just, let's just say it, it's fucking weird. A bunch of little bitty weird songs. And Substance ends with 2 of the strongest songs, not only on the album, but from the band in general. So, I don't think we're looking at a blowout here, but I think Abbey Road will probably win 7-5. It could be a split vote. I know that our typical handful of judges that we use are all very pro New Order and Joy Division, which I love. So I don't think this is going to be a complete and total blowout. I can't really say whether it's going to be split vote because the numbers really kind of lean towards it being straight Abbey Road winning, but I don't think they're going to win by a blowout. So, my prediction, 7-5 for Abbey Road. Back to you guys.
Yeah, Richard, I'm kind of curious myself how this is going to come out. I thought this would be one where the numbers were going to be a little misleading, and obviously the human factor for 2 albums of this stature is going to be a big factor in here. And the human factor, of course, would be our amazing veteran judges. All 3 of these judges have done album fights in the past. since Wes is coming to us from all the way across the pond, I'm going to introduce Wes first. Wes is, unlike the rest of us who are mainly fans, a real pedigree here. He is not just a music fan, but also a producer, and has produced some amazing stuff. Wes, what were your thoughts when we asked you to do this album fight?
Well, I thought this is a no-brainer. Obviously, I wasn't around when the Beatles were around, but when I was studying my stuff, they were very prominent in my sort of audio education, since these guys kind of invented multi-track recording as we know it. So I don't want to say I kind of went in biased, but then on the other hand, I was like, no, let's be open-minded. This is a track-by-track basis rather than an album-by-album, so anything can happen. So I was really excited and you know, kind of ready to go and ready to learn some new stuff as well, because I wasn't that familiar with New Order.
I hear you. I'm actually glad I'm hosting instead of judging, because this one was a brain pain for me. All right, let me introduce Tony Alvarado, who I think this is, 4 in a row for you, Tony? What were your thoughts heading in? What was your background between New Order and the Beatles here?
Yeah, Mike. So I own copies of both these albums. I listened to Abbey Road a few times from front to back. Appreciate where it stands in the pantheon of rock. I am, on the other hand, a pretty big New Order fan, so I also had to come in and try to not be biased, but from the other side of the ring there. Substance is a mainstay in my musical collection. I listen to it regularly, and yeah, when I was looking at this, I built this as, you know, one of the best alternative bands of all time versus one of the best bands of all time. And I thought it would be really interesting to see where that lined up. So I was pretty excited to see how it played out.
Cool. I'm looking forward to this too, but we have one more judge to introduce, and that would be the ever introspective Todd Nemet. Todd, what did you think when we asked you to do this one?
Well, so I've had Abbey Road in my house since I was 5 or 6 years old, so I've listened to this a long time, and I've grown up with this album. And some of the songs I can only hear with the skips, you know, that were on the record, you know. So it's a great album, and there's a lot of craftsmanship going on. You know, the Beatles are sort of imploding at this point, and it feels a little acrimonious. You know, it's weird to think that the songs are a minimum of 50 years old on this album. And then New Order, Substance, you know, I'm familiar with the radio hits. I wasn't really going to clubs. I was going to college basically in the 80s and then working through the 90s. But, you know, so I'm familiar with the radio hits, not super familiar with them. I'm more familiar with Joy Division. You know, it's super influential. And these songs are like between 32 and 38 years old on this album. And they sound way, way more fresh than the Beatles. You know, after playing one after the other, the Beatles sounds like a Sousa march, you know, or like ragtime, like Scott Joplin kind of thing, you know, compared to just how fresh the synthesizers and the production sounds on the New Order stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes.
My curiosity is way up on how this is going to turn out. So I'm going to stop yammering and get to round 1, which is Come Together versus Ceremony. And Wes, you are up first.
All right. Well, obviously the Beatles come in with a huge slammer, for me anyway. Just looking at the scorecard, and I'm almost the only one. But it's just that bass line that comes in. You just immediately know the song. You know exactly what's coming. It's sleazy. It's super cool. And I'd just like to give a little shout out to Ringo, because he just gets way underrated as a drummer. Everybody's going, oh, Ringo doesn't really drum. He's just a wicked drummer. He just knows exactly where to slot in and provides almost comedic fills that are just super cool and unexpected. And Ceremony, for me, it definitely has that cranky post-punk sound, which is really cool. It's super dark. You could just almost smell the fumes of the city that it was written in. Very depressing, very sort of, you know, fuck you kind of attitude. But to me, it's sort of meanders, you know, compared to Come Together, which is, you know, really a song. I think they're still kind of finding their way and you know, hey, we've got a bunch of synths, we just got to throw everything at it. So for me, the Beatles got this one. 10 for Come Together and 9 for Ceremony.
Perfect. I am so glad you brought up Ringo's drums, because I had that in I had that in my notes too when I listened to this. I'm like, wow, Ringo is really damn good in this. Tony, do you also think Ringo is really damn good on this track?
I think Ringo gets a bad rap. I think he's pretty good. I think that this song, Come Together, I think it's a great song. I mean, I know the lyrics sometimes, for me anyway, don't make a lot of sense, but the tune is catchy, the bass line, the drums are really good. I actually think, though, that Aerosmith really did this song justice when they covered it. I thought their version of the song is almost as good. For Ceremony, that opening track is a Joy Division track that they re-recorded. I really liked how they kind of paid homage to their past with this first track. Bernard's vocals are not as dark as Ian's were, but he does a great job of capturing the essence of the song. I think it's a beautiful song, and it epitomizes the New Order sound that we're going to hear for 40 years after. It's two great songs and great beginnings of both albums, but I lean towards Ceremony here, 10-9.
Okay, 10-9. Todd, you going to give us a tiebreaker on round one?
All right. Yeah, so first of all, is it Hold You in His Armchair or Arms? Yeah.
I think it's Armchair.
I think it's Armchair, too. So this is the song that got Lennon in trouble with Chuck Berry's publisher, right? And that's why we got like a horrible rock and roll album. I really, really like Come Together. It's just like very sinister sound and very sinister lyrics, like psychedelic, but like the bad kind of psychedelic, where your friend has to talk you down. Just kind of grim. It's great, kind of a great end of 60s kind of a song. I have a note on Ringo playing drums. It sounded like Paul McCartney imitating Ringo, kind of like back in the USSR a little bit, but then I listened to it a couple more times and I'm pretty sure that that's Ringo. But it sounds like somebody imitating Ringo, if that makes sense. Ceremony, I like this song a lot as well. Again, this is written by Joy Division and sung by New Order, kind of reinterpreted. It reminds me of Transmission a lot, the guitars and the drums, which is my favorite Joy Division song. And I could not for the life of me figure out what this song really grabbed me. I think this is the song I would listen to walking around. So I gave it to New Order 10-9.
Okay, it sounds like it was a close round for everybody. I know, again, I'm just a CompuBot this time, but it was a close round for me. So let's go ahead and segue right into round two. Something Who versus Everything's Gone Green. Who? Yeah, this is going to be tough. Tony, you get to lead us off here. What do you think?
All right, so Everything's Gone Green. It has that classic New Order sound. To me, everything meshes really well here. Guitars, synthesizers, drums. I like the lyrics. It sounds like, when I listen to it, it sounds like it could have been a Joy Division song. Like when Bernard wrote the song, he's like, going back to how Ian wrote songs, it's like, oh, maybe I should write a song like that. My only complaint with Everything's Gone Green is on and out. Like, New Order is really good at making long songs and they don't seem like long songs. Like, we'll talk about these as we go along, but there's some 7 and 8 minute tracks here that just, when I'm done listening to it, I'm like, oh, that was really good. Holy cow, it was 8 minutes. Everything's Gone Green seems like it's a long song, even though it clocks in at one of the shortest. I think it's just about 5 minutes. It seems a bit too long. It seems to drag on at the end. As for Something, I think Something is a 100% perfect song. I think it's the best song on the album. It's simple, great melody, performed perfectly. It just wasn't even, I gave this one to the Beatles 10-9. It was a no-brainer.
Hey, I'm kind of curious, and I'll ask Todd and Wes also, did you dig up Substance itself, or did you have to use the Spotify playlist? Because the songs are a little bit different on the album than Spotify.
So since I have both copies on my phone, copies of both albums, I just made a playlist on my phone and listened to the ones right off of Substance. There are some differences in the songs. Like when we get to around 11, there's a little bit of a difference. But yeah, I just went straight off of Substance.
Perfect.
I went mainly off of Spotify, but then I hit YouTube sometimes for the videos or for different versions. I own True Faith. I own that single on 12-inch with 1963. I found a promo copy at a Palo Alto Goodwill for $1, actually. So that's the only one I listened to straight on the record, the promotion from Quincy Jones's company. But anyway, yeah, I pretty much was on Spotify and then like a little bit of research on, Vimeo or YouTube. So Something, this is Frank Sinatra's favorite Lennon-McCartney song. So this is one of about 100 songs that were written for Pattie Boyd, of course. And one wonders if she had gotten her teeth fixed, if maybe there'd be 100 more songs about her. The last song has these kind of obscure, weird lyrics, and this was just everything's right there on the surface, and I like that. It's a great contrast. I love the descending notes in the chords. With the Beatles songs, they're always like 100 times more complicated than they sound. You could go down the music theory vortex with the Beatles pretty easily, and I did that last night till about 2 a.m. Also, I love in the outro of the song, he throws in an A major sort of fake out with that little riff, that 5-note riff, and it sounds like it's going to go back into the bridge, and then it ends. I think that's just really cool how he structured it like that. So Something's a great song. Everything's Gone Green. This is again kind of like Joy Division turning into New Order. It's moving towards dance music. The singing is not very confident, but you see glimpses of sort of New Order peeking through here. I think this would be a lot more fun to dance to than at the Hacienda maybe than to listen to. So I gave this one to the Beatles 10-9.
Okay, Wes, what were your thoughts on this round?
Everything's Gone Green. Let's start with that one. I just wrote down in true New Order style meandering vibe. The one thing I really didn't like about it was that sort of cacophony of vocals in the middle. It just felt sloppy compared to the rest of the track, which was pretty solid. It was funny to read that their producer walked out halfway through the mix because Sumner and Hookie asked him to turn the drums up. I thought that was fun. Which brings us to something which it's funny that Sinatra said it was his favorite Lennon-McCartney song, even though it was composed by George Harrison. So that was funny for me. I just love it. I mean, within the first bar, again, you know exactly what the song is. It's a proper song, beautiful arrangement, and I think it's one of Harrison's best compositions. And Paul's bass runs are so cool and unorthodox. So yeah, I had to give it to the Beatles 10-9.
I agree with all of you guys. This is Harrison's best work by far. So I think everybody's pretty unanimous on round 2. So let's move on to round 3. We've got Maxwell's Silver Hammer versus Temptation. And Todd, you are up first for this round. Okay.
So Maxwell's Silver Hammer, it wasn't as bad as I remembered it. This is, John Lennon called it music for the grannies, it feels like a leftover from the White Album, but I'm not exactly sure if that's what it is. It's these kind of Beatle-esque characters, and things are getting dark because it's the end of the 60s, I guess, and, it's a killer with a hammer, so it's kind of corny, for like, I don't know, you think about it, it's like for a decade, people have been offering Paul, laughing at all his jokes, offering him drugs or sex or whatever he wants, and if the worst thing he does is write corny songs like this, I guess he's an all right guy, There's like that weird Paul McCartney touch where it's kind of like a Charles Manson thing where there are girls in the gallery of the courthouse, cheering for him and doing that. So there's like, again, it's a weird song, but it's somehow rooted in its time. Temptation, it takes a little while to get going, and then it's great. It's just catchy as hell, that up, down, turn around, please don't let me hit the ground. It's just so great. You can listen to this 100 times. And there's a cool video somebody made way after where a girl steals a record and then some flowers, and she goes home to dance around in her apartment to it. And it's just such a great song. So I gave this one to New Order, 10-9.
Okay. New Order takes this round. Wes, you agree?
All right. So, yes, I mean, Maxwell Silverhammer, definitely a granny song, right? It's funny to read that none of the guys wanted any part of it. George and Lennon just fucking hated it. I think Lennon even walked away. He was like, no, I don't want anything to do with this shit. But I think Ringo nails it when he says that they needed some between quotation marks, granny music to appeal to a wider audience. So, but yeah, it's definitely of its time. But, any song with an anvil in it, come on. How cool is that? And whether you hate it or like it, it's a bit like Marmite over here. You either hate it or you love it, but it sticks in your ear. It just won't fucking go away. This dang dang. Put that against Temptation, which I thought initially because I didn't know the song, and I listened to it a few times, and I thought this is New Order trying to be Kraftwerk, but without the finesse. But it definitely felt like it was becoming more commercial and accessible. So I think they're definitely sort of maybe honing their craft a bit more and kind of appealing to a wider audience there. But sonically, I just couldn't get past those drums. But maybe that's just the sound engineer talking. But yeah, I gave it to the Beatles 10-9 just because of the anvil.
Yeah, the drums are always dicey. Whenever you listen to 80s music, the drums are always a dicey proposition.
Yeah, Stephen Morris is a damn good drummer too. It's a shame sometimes he gets programmed away. Tony, what's your opinion? Round 3.
So with Maxwell's Silver Hammer, yeah, I basically agree with what Wes and Todd have said. It's kind of a goofy song, but for some reason, I thought it was, as far as on the album, I thought it played okay. It was a pretty upbeat song about such a murderous rampage, so that was kind of a juxtaposition, but I didn't think it was a bad way. I thought it was kind of cool. Temptation is one of my favorite New Order songs, and the version on Substance is, so if you got a chance to listen to one on Substance, it's a 7-minute version that was re-recorded exclusively for the album. And yeah, I also love the Tonight I Think I'll Walk Alone, I'll Find My Soul As I Go Home. And then the oh, you got green eyes, oh, you got blue eyes, oh, you got gray eyes. I find sometimes that just, I don't know, I could be in the middle of doing nothing and for some reason that pops into my head. I thought it was nice, fast-paced, catchy. I thought it was a great song by New Order. I gave it to them 10-9.
Okay, so we've got another not unanimous round here. Let's see if that continues as we head into round 4 with another tough round on my paper. Oh Darling versus Blue Monday. And we've got Wes going first for this round. Wes.
All right. Oh Darling, yes. It's cool. Definitely takes us, for me, it takes us back to the sort of stuff they were probably doing in the Hamburg area, you know, playing down the Reeperbahn and stuff. So it's that kind of 50s, 60s doo-wop thing that, you know, they knew so well, because that's what they grew up on, honing their skills. I made a little technical note saying that the backing vocals were way too low. And then there's Blue Monday. I mean, Jesus Christ. What a track. Now we're getting somewhere. It's solid, it's punchy, it's got killer licks in it, it's properly produced, and everything is in the right place. So I mean, it blew me away. I knew it, but just sitting down today and listening to it again and again and again, I had to give it 10-9 to New Order.
Okay, Wes finally gives a round to New Order here. Tony, agree?
Yeah, pretty much. I really liked Oh Darling because, just as Wes said, I liked the doo-wop sound, and it totally reminded me of something they might have done earlier in their career. And I really liked how on these first 4 songs on Abbey Road, it was almost different songs, different styles, and I appreciated that. I really liked it. I thought Paul's vocals were great for this type of song, even though John, I don't think he was a fan, but I thought it was great. But yeah, Blue Monday, I think it's the best-selling 12-inch single of all time, and still 36 years later. I like how Bernard delivers the vocals. It's just like, it doesn't seem like there's any emotion in it whatsoever, and I think that really plays on this track. And yeah, there's 3 minutes of outro at the end, but I still think that even to this day, you play this in a dance club and people are going to get up and go. It's a synth pop classic. 10-9 New Order.
Another judge for New Order. Todd, unanimous?
Yes, I agree with everything that Tony and Wes said about Blue Monday. It's just everything is exactly in the right place. It kind of has that acidy sound. The production's perfect. You know, the way that little synth thing comes in a little bit off kilter is great. It's kind of a happy mistake. My cat loved the video with all the stuff jumping around, even though there were dogs in it. He was fascinated by it. And I agree. What really makes the song is that deadpan delivery of the lyrics, and just really flat, laid out there, you know, which of course belies the poppy, peppy music, and also belies sort of the angry, betrayed, you know, feeling of the actual lyrics. So that works perfectly. I think this is the first one where I actually approve of Bernard singing. And then, Oh Darling, you know, this is the last song all the Beatles were in the studio to work on, I believe. You know, I love the vocals. You know, Paul came in every day to just kind of not shred his voice, but sort of break it in and get used to it. And it sounds great, I think. You know, I'd rather listen to something like Bad Boy off of Past Masters or something if I want this kind of vibe. This is where you see the craftsmanship of the Beatles sort of detracts from the rocking out of the Beatles, because they're so clever and they understand the music and the chord progressions and everything so well that it feels almost like over crafted. It's a rocker, but if you take it apart, it's super complex, and it somehow detracts from the song. Anyway, I gave it to New Order 10-9.
Yeah, I've always felt "Oh Darling" would have been better suited for John as opposed to Paul, though Paul does a damn good job singing it. I think the song was probably a better John song, but at this point in their career, Paul would never have given John another song.
Yeah, well, listen to Bad Boy. Listen to the singing on that, and imagine that same voice singing "Oh Darling."
I will definitely do that. Okay, this takes us to round 5, and we have our first and only Ringo appearance, Octopuss's Garden, going up against Confusion. Tony.
Yeah, that's what my notes said, the Ringo vocal track of the album. A fun song, though. I liked, when you do the research, you find that this song is pretty much the antithesis of what was going on in the band, because this song, to me, was about life and simple things and simple pleasures, and meanwhile, the band is just imploding around everybody. I like the melody. It didn't sound very, it just sounded like a typical Beatles song that you would expect to hear. Nothing more, nothing less. And I appreciate that. I like that. Confusion. I like the song for its lyrics and for the beats. I love the chorus. To me, it was just a classic New Order sound. Both Peter Hook and Bernard Sumner played the bass on this track, which I thought was interesting. It's definitely a step down from Blue Monday, but even on a compilation, you're following a super hit. You're probably not going to be as good as the super hit. That being said, I still gave it to New Order 10-9. I thought the synth pop sound was something that I enjoyed and liked, and I thought it was better than the happy-go-lucky sound of Octopuss's Garden.
So Ringo comes in and lands a couple punches here. Todd, you agree? Did Ringo land some punches here?
Yeah, so Confusion, I wasn't crazy about either song, frankly. Confusion is okay. The singing is terrible. It sounds like karaoke, and then the fade out where people are shouting, singing at the end. I wasn't crazy about it. I like the beat, I like the synth, but the singing sort of wrecked it. It's interesting about how everything's programmed, like the drums are programmed and sequenced, like the bands that I really like new wave kind of bands, Devo and the Cars, they were sort of their last gasp before they broke up, was they started sequencing everything and programming everything. And, that was kind of that last thing before the bands totally imploded. And it's interesting that New Order found a way to combine that, with guitar and bass and really, go in that cool kind of dancing synth pop direction where other bands couldn't go. So I admire that, but I'm not crazy about Confusion. Octopuss's Garden, I'm not crazy either. This is Ringo's only other composition, the other one being Don't Pass Me By. And I'm not crazy about it. I'm always suspicious when rock stars kind of get into that Rousseau, noble, savage kind of thing and say, oh, I wish I could live under the ocean instead of being a famous rock star with worldwide adulation. I just get a little bit suspicious about that conceit. Lennon is using his little finger-picking style that Harry Nilsson taught him, which is goes back to Julia at least. So it's a okay song, but I'm not crazy about it. So not crazy about either song. I gave it to the Beatles, 10-9.
Okay, Beatles take this one from Todd. Wes, where are you at with this round?
Round 5 was interesting. I think I was a bit mean. Confusion. So, yeah, obviously they set the mark quite high with Blue Monday. So to me, it felt a little messy again. It kind of went a couple of years back. It kind of felt a bit like a demo. Here's some programmed drum stuff, some synth noises, and I think it was mentioned before that the vocal really didn't do it any favors. So I agree with that one. So yeah, I think maybe for everybody that must have been a massive disappointment. I think if you look at the charts, it actually shows that. It kind of feels a bit like several ideas lumped together and let's just push it out there. Octopuss's Garden, obviously, it's kind of a novelty track, isn't it? It's Ringo being his goofy self. But I do love the fact that it's inspired by him being on Peter Sellers' boat and ordering fish and chips and instead being given octopus for the first time in his life. But I do love Ringo singing. And I don't know, just on the off chance that some technical people are listening, I love that tremolo effect on the backing vocals in the middle, where they actually stick an oscillator through a Fairchild limiter and make it go, make it all shaky like that. So it's I think it's like the, very early thing of side chaining. And I do love the fact that those bubbles at the end are blown in a glass of milk with a straw. That's gotta win it for me. So I did give it to the Beatles 10 based on bubbles in a glass of milk.
That is amazing knowledge, Wes. Thanks for sharing that. There's a lot of things that I didn't know about that song. Even though when I scored, I gave it Octopuss Garden as well. I know with Confusion, there's two different versions of this song, and the one on Substance, I would rank slightly better than the one that was available on Spotify, but still, yeah, I agree 100%. And that takes us to round 6. That would be I Want You, She's So Heavy, with its complex lyrics, versus Thieves Like Us. Todd, why don't you start us off?
Okay, let's start with Thieves Like Us. I was listening to that, and I felt this urge to make a dress, like in like the Pretty in Pink soundtrack. But lyrically, they're getting way better. Everything. It's the interesting with the lyrics. Usually I lock onto those, and they have a way of writing the lyrics that where you really can't interpret it, and then you kind of project your own thing onto it, and it almost makes me afraid to say what I think some of these songs are about, because it's going to be revealing, me. so it's interesting how they're able to make that so vague and do it that way, But Bernard, so he still can't sing. The bass is great on this, like super organic, But I like the lyrics of things like "When it dies for good." I guess I should just assume all New Order songs are about Ian Curtis, unless told otherwise. Anyway, I Want You, She's So Heavy. This is one of my favorite all-time Beatles songs. It has Billy Preston on keyboards. They've known him ever since opening for Little Richard and touring around. Paul's bass playing on this is incredible. It's amazing. It's just in your face. They kept tracking. I think they like a new transistor mixing board. They got rid of the old tube one, and I think that enabled to do some of these things, like bring out the bass, make things clearer on the lower end, like track guitars a zillion times. And this song is just so great. It's just so great. And what's interesting is I listened to this on the original album pressing. And you hear the little click, like in the Les Paul, that little click switch. He's clicking, switching pickups, I guess John is. And they edited it out. In the 2009 remaster version, the click sounds are taken out. And I think it's like one of the coolest things. Anyway, I think I Want You, She's So Heavy is great. There's only like 14 words in the whole song. So I'm giving it to the Beatles, 10-9.
Okay, Wes. Let's hear your opinion on I Want You, She's So Heavy versus Thieves Like Us.
All right, so let's start with Thieves Like Us. Listening to this album's like playing a yo-yo. They keep going up and down for me. So they've definitely redeemed themselves here. It's a much slicker sound. There's a lot more structure to it. And I actually thought that the vocals were delivered. I mean, it's still not amazing, but you can feel some passion in there. It's got a great vibe. I Want You is... yeah, such a moody intro. It just sets the vibe. The one thing I would say is it's quite sad that you can hear the A-track to A-track transfer noises on the tape, because they were bouncing, sub-mixes down so often. They just incurred a lot of hiss, so you can hear that in the beginning. It's just riddled with hiss. But it's just a kick-ass performance. And you mentioned the transistor board, which is correct. They started it at Trident, but then it was mixed back at Abbey Road, I think. So it would have gone through some valves anyway at the mixing stage, but it was definitely recorded at Trident. So I'm gonna give it to our Fab Four, 10-9.
Okay, Tony, do you agree on the scores here?
I agree that I Want You, She's So Heavy is such a good song. It's got that heavy blues. I really like that. I like the fact that it only had 14 words or whatever it was in it. I really like that. And then they just keep repeating it. But it did get a little monotonous at the end. I thought it could have been trimmed a little bit. And then I didn't really like the abrupt ending. I don't know why, that just kind of bothered me. Thieves Like Us, like Wes said, yeah, they come back. It's a strong So I thought it was a strong song. I really liked the bass line. I thought it was very catchy. I think this is a really good New Order song. I think it's definitely a step up from Confusion. And once again, you still have Blue Monday as like the up on the pedestal. It's still not that high. So I gave this one to with a lean to New Order 10-9, more so because I thought that I Want You, She's So Heavy just dragged at the end. I thought that they were the Beatles here were not very successful at making an 8-minute song.
Yeah, that's I have to agree with Tony on this one. Great song, but maybe needs a haircut, as I often say when I'm judging.
I like the ending. It kind of reminds me of The Sopranos. It just cuts out.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
Yeah. You think the Beatles were eating onion rings at the time?
Yeah, that could be. They just their fingers slipped. Well, the other thing, this is like the end of the first side of the album, right? So you walk over and then you turn it over, and then you get Here Comes the Sun. But it's also part of that, just it's playing out the first side.
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business, or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner
or at JohnLG69
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
Yeah, that could be. They just their fingers slip. Well, the other thing, this is like the end of the first side of the album, right? So you walk over and then you turn it over, and then you get Here Comes the Sun. But it's also part of that, just it's playing out the first side.
I was going to go into the fact that we are at the halfway point, and in both cases, we're flipping albums back in the old days. I did a quick summary of the scores, and we're at 171 to 170 at the halfway point, which is about as close as it could possibly be at this point. And that 1 point, of course, is in favor of the Beatles. So this is anybody's fight at this point, halfway through. We're also about halfway through New Order's 1980-1987 career, because this is a compilation. So real quick, guys, and we'll start with Wes. What are your thoughts at this halfway point with, something you learned, something that you're expecting as you head into the second half?
Yeah, no, I think nothing to learn on the Beatles front, but New Order was great for me just to listen through stuff that obviously passed me by completely, because I was brought up on rock and classical music, so this stuff just passed me by completely. So hearing all those crazy synth sounds was just nice, and it was cool to sort of be able to place them and think back on all the synths. Now I just want to go on eBay and buy a bunch of analog synths.
Yeah. This stuff on vinyl, I've got a lot of New Order on vinyl, and I was breaking it out over the last couple of days to listen to it. So Tony, what are your thoughts at the halfway point?
This is as knockdown and drag out as I expected, with these two fantastic albums. So, I'm not surprised that it's that close. I'm expecting to see more in the second half of this fight. But one thing that was interesting is I think Todd said a few things about Bernard's vocals on this album and maybe in general, but I had the chance to see Peter Hook and the Light play last year, and Peter Hook's band plays these same songs for the most part. And when you hear his vocals, it's like night and day. You're like, you wonder the same thing. I'm sitting there in the crowd going, wow, why did Peter Hook not sing lead on this band? So, yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've noticed in this is, the vocals maybe not as good as they could have been, and we'll see what that does the rest of this album.
And Todd, what are your thoughts at the halfway point here with the score being so very close?
I'm surprised that I gave half the tunes to New Order. Like Wes, I was kind of raised on rock and roll, not so much classical, and sort of bought into that whole anti-disco propaganda that I'm still ashamed of to this day. And there's all that cool music I missed out on. So the Beatles are kind of embedded in my DNA at this point, and the New Order stuff I came to much later. But I appreciate the freshness of the New Order stuff. You listen to the Beatles, it's like they're art pieces. There's like incredible amount of craftsmanship and work, and like Maxwell's Silver Hammer. They recorded it 2 zillion times to get it right, and there's it's like an art piece. So you hang it on the wall. It's not super useful. And then the New Order stuff is like dance music. You dance to it. You do all kinds of other things to it. You know, you flip out, whatever. And so there's a freshness and there's a utility to the New Order music. I think that surprised me, that grabbed me more than the Beatles, even though, you know, despite all the familiarity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And with that, let's start on the second half of the fight. And we have got a really, really hard round to start off the second half. We have round 7 with Here Comes the Sun going up against The Perfect Kiss. And Wes, you get to start this fun round.
Here Comes the Sun. Obviously, lovely song. You know, everybody knows it. It's pretty... but I have to admit, I'm sorry, it's never been one of my favorites. Musically, I think it's perfect. It features some tasty use of George's Moog that he brought back. One of my favorite things, guitars through a Leslie cab. That always wins points for me. And of course, George Martin's arrangements, they're just divine. I mean, this guy was a genius and a beautiful human being. But then you put that up against The Perfect Kiss, and it's like, they're back. It's kick-ass. I really like it. I admit I had never heard it before. And they're just maintaining that feel for structure and production that we had a little bit earlier on. Again, the one thing that kills me again is the vocals. I think that's going to be the thread throughout the rest of this fight. I don't know, maybe they should have dropped it in keys so they actually could have sung it right. But I do love the frogs in the bridge, and just to keep my theme going, they're going to win it 10-9 based on using frogs in a song. It's genius. Yeah, 10-9.
I've always loved the frogs. I've got so many memories of dancing to this back in my teen years that it's hard to not love The Perfect Kiss. Tony.
So this round was tough for me because I thought it was, one of New Order's best songs against one of the Beatles' best songs. Perfect Kiss, it's another long track. The one on Substance is about 8 minutes long. If you catch it on another album or a compilation, I think it's about 4.5 minutes, and it also leaves out the third verse. So I noticed that when I was going back through my New Order catalog. I love the end of the song, at the end of the lyrics anyway, where it says the perfect kiss is the kiss of death. I really like that. I also love the frogs on the bridge. That was really cool. And I think it has enough elements to keep moving for the entire 8 minutes. Like I'm not bored listening to it. There's always something there that's getting me going. Here Comes the Sun. I think it's the second of the perfect songs on Abbey Road. And I found it funny that they're both done by George Harrison. I don't know why. I just thought that, you had something, and now we have Here Comes the Sun, and they're both perfect, and he's doing them. I thought it was a very optimistic song. Once again, kind of an antithesis thing here, because it was about the end of dark times and better times ahead, and clashing with what was happening within the band. So I thought that was kind of cool. I leaned to the Beatles here, 10-9. I thought that it was a little bit better than Perfect Kiss, even though Perfect Kiss is a really, really good New Order song.
Okay, so we're 1-1 with Todd being the tiebreaker for this round. Todd, opinions?
Okay. Yeah, this was a really difficult round. I mean, it's two fucking masterpieces, so it's very, very hard to compare. And then they're completely different as well in sort of style and intent. Here Comes the Sun. It's interesting. If you look at Spotify, this has by far the most plays than any other Beatles song, which I thought is kind of interesting. I feel like George's songwriting peak was higher than Lennon or McCartney's, but it was, of course, much, much shorter. You listen to this, and then then you back it up against All Things Must Pass, and it's just incredible songwriting, incredible structures. The stuff that's going on. I mean, the song sounds like a folk song you sing around a campfire, but it has super complicated. It changes time signatures like a zillion times. It has these cool kind of churchy chords and all these cool kind of modulations in the bridge. It's super complicated, and it's really, but the craftsmanship doesn't detract just from like what a great, sunny, happy, song this is that anybody can relate to, musically, lyrically, anything. It's a perfect song. The Perfect Kiss, I have a note here that's like, if Bernard Sumner wasn't such a good guitarist, I might think he's tone deaf, but I guess he's playing those instruments, so I'm guessing he can hear tones. But anyway, I really like this. I love the frog sound effects as well. I have a creek in my backyard and a koi pond, and so I go to sleep basically listening to that every night, and it's good to hear. It's good to hear it and turn into songs. I watched the video that Jonathan Demme made of this. It's like 10 minutes of them, playing. It kind of unlocked some of New Order to me. How they're sitting there waiting around, waiting. There's one point where Jillian reaches up and turns on one of the sound effects, like she's just sitting there waiting, and then she turns the knob. It's like, it's not like a band rocking out. It's not like In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, but it still has the same, greatness to it. It has all these layers and all these things are going on, and it's just so complexly structured. And like you said, it's 10 minutes, so you don't get bored. And so it's really, really good. They're both incredible songs, but I gave it to the Beatles just to edge it out a little bit. But it was very, very tough. 10-9.
Okay, so we have a round here, and that takes us into round 8, which is Because, going up against Subculture. And I actually marked this as possible Burford round. So we'll let Tony start it off, see if you agree with me.
So on Because, I really like the 3-part vocals. In my research, I found it was inspired somewhat by Yoko Ono's playing of Moonlight Sonata. So I was like, oh, this is intriguing. But other than the vocals, this song didn't really do anything for me. And what I was trying, it's hard because in this context, it's like the song has, in my opinion, has to stand alone, right? And then I'm thinking about it going up, but we got the medleys coming up next. And it's like, oh, okay. So I thought that this might have just, I don't know, I thought it was kind of like filler between, Here Comes the Sun, which is fantastic, and then the medley that's coming up. Subculture, I thought that, it's just a typical New Order song. I liked how the female vocals on the track. I thought that was really good. I really liked the lyrics. I liked the beat. It's just, 1985 at its finest, I thought, as far as synth pop goes. I gave this one to New Order 10-9.
Okay, Todd, what was your opinion on round 8? Do you think it might be the Burford round too?
This was a difficult one. It's two completely different things. So I agree with what Tony said. It has a weird structure. It's just kind of verse, bridge, verse. So it doesn't feel like a complete song. It feels like a snippet, which is kind of getting us in the mood for this medley that's coming up. But it doesn't have that standard pop song structure, and it has a kind of these floating harmonies, and it ends on this weird unresolved chord, that gets resolved by the next song. So this is just a weird. It's a weird song, but I still like it. I like the way the harmonies tracked, and I like a lot about this song. Subculture, I was less interested in. I like some of the lyrics and kind of the alienation of it. Like, you won't even notice that you're alone. That's a great lyric. I guess Ian wasn't the only gloomy Gus in Joy Division there, but it's not. It's not them at their peak, so I went with the Beatles 10-9 for Because.
Okay, Wes.
Yeah, I'm probably the odd one out, but I put my mean hat on again for New Order. Maybe it's because I'm just discovering them, and I was like, come on, you can do better than that. So Subculture, I mean, they have found a proper sonic landscape that defines them for me. It's dark. And it's got that weird disco thing that sort of seems to bridge the 70s into the 80s. And I'm never ashamed to say that I like disco. It fucking sounds great and it rocks along, so fuck it. But once again, frigging vocals. They just destroy it for me. But I noticed in listening to all of this, and it has been mentioned before, it really depends on which version you listen to. Because there's like a million versions of every song out there. And I think I'm right in saying that the Substance version has this really pointy kick that doesn't even move. It's just like a click. Kind of belongs on a metal record, really. So there's no punch in the low end driving it along for me. And then Because I'm probably the only one that's going to say that it's just genius. I love those triple tracked 3-part vocal harmonies that just, waver about, and George Martin and John doubling each other, John on the guitar and George on the electric harpsichord. And then, those crazy little Moog parts that sort of foreshadow what's to come a few years later in like Clockwork Orange with Walter Carlos and all that stuff. So I really enjoyed it. So I gave it to the Beatles 10. Oh God, I dinged New Order for being shitty. 10-8.
Oh, we got a knockdown. We got the Beatles doing the old Muhammad Ali pose over Bernard, who's bleeding profusely, saying, "I really tried to sing better." That takes us to round 9. You Never Give Me Your Money versus Shell Shock. So we're starting off the Beatles medley on side 2. Todd, you get to start us off on this one.
Okay, I liked Shell Shock quite a bit. I think this was only released on the Pretty in Pink soundtrack. You know, it's classic, and it's getting more into the rock zone. There's a guitar. There's kind of that slightly atonal piano, which it reminded me of Aladdin Sane a little bit. It's, you know, it's layered. It's really great. I really like this song. But, you know, You Never Give Me Your Money, this is peak Paul for me, you know, as far as I'm concerned, just him on a piano singing, kind of like Maybe I'm Amazed a little bit. You know, this is really good, Paul. I love the backing guitar that George just kind of slides in there with the perfect counterpart to the melody and everything. You know, it's weird that Paul's writing about kind of business problems and money problems, but, you know, whatever. I really like You Never Give Me Your Money, so I give it to the Beatles 10-9.
Okay, Beatles take it as they start the medley. Wes, I have a feeling here, but let's hear. Do you want to give New Order a little bit of a chance?
Oh, this was really tough. You know, Shell Shock. Let's just move in straight with that, and let me just say, see, he can fucking sing. You know, he's delivering vocals here, and you know, bastards. Every time I criticize them, they come back with a big one. You know, it's got a tight and a great sound. But then you put it against You Never Give Me Your Money, classic Beatles. And for me, this is the kind of stuff they started on Sgt. Pepper. You know, they're creating these sonic journeys that take you to all these different places, and they've got all this sort of almost musique concrète tape loop stuff happening. And the thing that still amazes me today is they had to do that on 8-track tape, which is amazing. I mean, nowadays in the studio, you know, if you say, fuck you, we were only going to use 24 channels, people are freaking out. They did it with 8, and they did it with 4 before that. Very, 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 very close. I'm giving it to the Beatles 10-9.
Okay, Tony, you going to keep the trend going on the Beatles here?
Man, this was hard for me too. You know, Shell Shock is solid. Good long intro, good melody, good lyrics. Love the chorus. It's another 6-minute effort by New Order, but like I said, it doesn't feel like 6 minutes. It just keeps on moving at a good pace, keeps a good flow, and I really liked it. And then, yeah, You Never Give Me Your Money, just classic Beatles right here. I looked at it and I was like, I called this Shell Shock. I called Shell Shock a tier 2 New Order song. Like, not as good as Blue Monday, but really good. And then I called You Never Give Me Your Money. I called it a combined song because it almost sounded like 4 songs in one here with all the changes. And I really liked that. But I gave it to New Order because I didn't like the ending of the song. I just thought it was disappointment at the end. And so I gave it to New Order 10-9.
Okay, so we did not have a unanimous round here. We are heading deep into the medley on Abbey Road and into some of New Order's bigger hits as we move into round 10, where we've got Sun King versus State of the Nation. Wes, you get to lead us off.
Okie dokie. Right, let's start with New Order. State of the Nation. So I think it's obvious that they learned from working with John Roby here. You know, it's clear that they're now kind of starting to sculpt arrangements and you know, give everything its place. And I'll come back to that in just a second. Let's just switch to Sun King quickly. It's just a nice vibey track with lovely harmonies and some quite interesting left to right panning. It kind of reminds me of what Floyd went on to do with like Saint-Tropez and Metal. And actually, I'm not a big fan of the Spanish words in the song, but anyway, that's a little aside. But I was really split on this because I really wanted to give it to New Order, but being a sound guy, I just had to ding them for you know, it sounded like once they left a producer and started doing shit themselves again, their sound suffered, and suddenly it went smaller. Everything went a bit more sort of in the middle and woolly. So I dinged them a little bit for that. So I'm afraid the Sun King gets it 10-9.
Fair enough. Tony.
Yeah, it was State of the Nation. This song, I thought, when you listen to Substance all the way through, it doesn't seem like State of the Nation fits in perfectly with the other songs, and it sounded like this was a lot more of a rocker for New Order, a lot more guitar than on other songs, and I didn't think it's a bad thing. I thought it showed, their versatility in their sound. It sounded like in the chorus he's trying to turn into some sort of social justice song in a way, when he said the state of the nation is causing deprivation, but I still enjoyed the groove and the sound. Sun King, when I first heard Sun King, when I was doing this deep dive, I'm listening to it and I'm like, this sounds like something else. And I was like trying to figure out what it was. And I went through my library a little bit and I was like, this sounds like a Fleetwood Mac song. But the triple vocals were so good. I really liked that. Wasn't a fan of the Spanish at the end also. Yeah, I didn't really know what they were trying to do with that there. I gave this one to New Order 10-9.
Okay, we got to split again. And Todd.
So I like in State of the Nation. I like that Niles Rodgers kind of rhythm guitar that's going on. It was like maybe they're reaching a little bit further back into their roots and digging around disco bins for that. I'm less crazy about that bass guitar and the way it was panning back and forth. That wasn't cool. I agree with this. With the lyrics, they suffer because I think they're trying to protest something. It's not super clear what it is. I listened to the B-side, Shame of the Nation, which is another version of the same song. And it has backing vocals on it and much different production. And I didn't like that one as much as the original State of the Nation. I don't think the backing vocals work really well on New Order songs. Anyway, Sun King, I love those like dreamy chords and the harmony song, and then that kind of ponderous guitar. It's kind of going back and forth and meandering. Super great. I hate that fake Italian part. I've never cared for that kind of like John Lennon Spaniard in the Works kind of wordplay stuff. I always thought it's just like kind of 3rd, 4th grade stuff. It's crappy. And, this is like a rare case where sort of quality control fails in the Beatles. They're probably just ready to get home or get out of there or something. But that wrecks the song as far as I'm concerned. So I gave it to New Order 10-9.
So New Order wins it for you. I've always personally liked Bernard's guitar work on State of the Nation, probably one of his better performances. Yeah. Musically.
I read somewhere that Jillian took over some of the rhythm guitar stuff. Is that true?
I don't know. If you read it somewhere, it might be true.
I'm sorry. I know she played rhythm guitar on some of the tracks, yes.
Oh, okay. So that's why I want to give proper credit. But yeah, I really like the guitar in this song, the rhythm guitar.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we are moving into the penultimate round, round 11, where this is a mouthful. Mean Mr. Mustard, Polythene Pam, and She Came In Through the Bathroom Window, going up against one hell of a New Order track, Bizarre Love Triangle. Tony, you get to lead us off with this tough one.
Lead off. All right, sounds good. So, Bizarre Love Triangle, that's one of the... I think half of the songs on this album were from the compilation were off of albums and half were just singles. This one's off of Brotherhood. The version on Substance is a remix, and I like the Brotherhood version more than the remix. It's arguably one of their most popular songs, but it never reached the top 40 in the UK or the US, which was interesting. And this song it's been covered by so many bands. It's so catchy. The lyrics are great. And I'm a little partial to it because whenever my little baby can't sleep, I sing her this song and she goes to sleep. So I think that's a good thing. For the Mean Mr. Mustard medley, I actually kind of liked it. I liked Polythene Pam better than Mean Mr. Mustard. I liked that one better. I thought the groove was a little bit better. The one thing, though, is that like Polythene Pam was better than Mean Mr. Mustard, in my opinion, but they were both kind of just average. And then it's saved by She Came In Through the Bathroom Window. Paul's vocals I thought were great, and then for 2 minutes I'm like, wow, this is really good. But overall, when we're talking about the entire 3 songs in the medley versus Bizarre Love Triangle, I'd give it to New Order again. I thought it was, even the remix version was better. So I gave it to him 10-9.
Okay, Todd, agree?
Yeah, so Bizarre Love Triangle, it's just classic synth pop, from that beginning synth bass all the way to the end. It's just classic. I love between like when the first verse ends and the first chorus comes in. There's like a stretch there that is fantastic with a keyboard and the little string, kind of keyboard string runs that go up and down. It's just so cool. It's transcendent what they do. This is and the lyrics are great too. With that, every time I see you falling, I get down on my knees and pray. That's an amazing lyric. So it's just a fantastic song. This is New Order, I guess, hitting on all cylinders, being at their best. I couldn't figure out what the triangle was. I'm guessing it's like Me, You, and Dying or something, knowing these guys. Anyway, Mr. Mustard, Pam, and the Bathroom Window. This is great. It's great Beatles. Like, I feel like Me and Mr. Mustard would fit great on the White Album. It's kind of one of those character songs, and then Lennon kind of plays around with the time signature in a kind of like Happiness is a Warm Gun kind of way. Polythene Pam is great. It's weird. There's one part, it sounds like he's laughing. John's laughing, but he's saying, "Listen to that, Mal," which is weird. And then in the Bathroom Window is great. Again, peak Paul McCartney. And this reminds me of Drive My Car for some reason, and the backing vocals on it are great. So these three songs are great, like tied together, part of the melody. But I think Bizarre Love Triangle is just a much better song. So I gave it to New Order, 10-9.
Okay, Todd. And Wes, are you going to keep the trend going for New Order here?
Well, we'll see. Well, that clears it up. Thanks for clearing up that was the remix. I was wondering which version I was listening to. So I made a note. I'm assuming this is Pettibone remix.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe it's because I'm doing a lot of pre-production with bands at the moment. It takes over a minute for the vocal to come in. It's like, fuck off. Get to the point. Which obviously wasn't the point back then. But yeah, it's all this resequencing, Fairlight hits and stuff like that, all the early sampling, and for me that vocal just does not do all this cool technology justice. So it just lets it down a little bit for me. And we talked about some of their songs being really long but not feeling long. To me, this one felt like it went on a bit. And then we have the Beatles. Crazy stuff, brain farts all over the place. Mean Mr. Mustard, for me, harks back a little bit to, Rita, the lovely meter maid on Sgt. Pepper in vibe, and then going into John doing a Pete Townsend style pinball wizard slammer on Polythene Pam, and yeah, obviously she came in through the bathroom window, just saves the whole thing because it's a killer track. And you know where I'm going with this already. Ringo plays a whip. Such a cool noise. It's like, oh, cool, excellent, you got to play a whip. I just love all that stuff. So I did give it to the Beatles on this one, 10-9.
So the Beatles take it by the tip of a whip. That was a really bad joke. I apologize to everyone listening. And that takes us to the final round, which is once again going to be a tough one for you guys. We've got the end of the medley. Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight, the end, with Her Majesty tacked on to the end of the track, versus True Faith. So as we go into this final round here, Todd, you get to lead us off.
Okay, there's a lot to talk about here. Let's start with True Faith. This is a classic song, and this is one where the melody stuck out with me as being a good melody. I mentioned that I found this single, so I've heard a couple different remixes. I played this on my turntable a bunch. It's written from the point of view of somebody, I guess, addicted to drugs. He was consciously trying to do that, which is interesting. The lyrics don't really matter as much with New Order as with other bands, so it doesn't, just kind of the parts that come through and you sing along to, it doesn't really matter. I think it's a great song. It's a Live 105 classic for all you, staple for all you Bay Area people. Reminds me of driving home on the 101. Anyway, Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight, the end, Her Majesty. These are great. This is like Golden Slumbers, Paul, again, belting is so good. The thing I really like about Golden Slumbers, there's a brass quartet playing softly in the background toward the end. It sounds like something out of Charles Ives or something like that. It's such an interesting sound that was so popular for so long, almost before recording, and you very, very rarely hear it, and it just sounds perfect here, and it's so subtle, but it's great. I love the sound of a brass quartet, and you really don't hear it anywhere, let alone on rock albums. Carry That Weight is interesting because it feels like it's the bridge for Golden Slumbers. You know, you feel like you're hearing the slipping into the bridge, and then it's actually a whole new song. And then it calls back to You Never Give Me Your Money, which is kind of the bridge of that song. So there's like really interesting structure of how they're doing that. And then the end, of course, you know, at this point, the end is really like just three different separate songs. And of course, you know, I love the guitar solos. I love that they had to talk Ringo into doing a drum solo because he hates doing them, which is great. Classic Ringo. When the piano comes in for that last kind of couplet, it sounds out of tune, and I don't know if that's on purpose or not. You would think that they would hit something like that, but it's very jarring where that comes in. And then it ends with Her Majesty, and even that as a throwaway. Listen to the bass, like, I mean, you know, the bass figure of the acoustic guitar he's playing against the melody and against the thing. Like, even that throwaway is super complex, super well structured. It's amazing. And also the Beatles invented the hidden track, I guess. So sorry for kind of rambling, but the Beatles take this one 10-9.
Okay. Wes, what's your final word here in the final round?
Oh, God. Yeah, New Order do it again. They come back fighting. You know, again, properly sung. It's got real structure. It's a song. Thank you very much. They're obviously moving into more of a straight dance kind of vibe, but I really like it. And I think you can hear Stephen Haig's influence. You know, I mean, you can sort of hear parts of West End Girls, Pet Shop Boys, Kiss Them From Me from Susie and the Banshees, and some later productions he's done. So overall, I really enjoyed it. It was a nice closer. The Beatles, Golden Slumbers, those strings, they just kill me. Goosebumps. I said it before. George Martin's musicality is you know, second to none. You know, if a song just tugs you, that song comes in, I just get a tear in my eye. So for me, that's a good sign. And yes, Carry That Weight. It's like it's part of that song. It's part of earlier songs in the album. And you get, you know, 12 violins, 4 violas, 4 cellos, double bass, 4 horns, 3 trumpets, a trombone, bass trombone. It's like, wow, okay, this is lush. Which brings us to the end. And yes, who says Ringo can drum? I'm going to say it again. That dude can drum. And I love the fact that somebody mentioned the Legado de Vida earlier, because that's kind of the part, according to him, that he copied. But he had to play to an accompaniment of guitars and tambourine, which they then muted because he just didn't want to play a solo by himself. But yeah, to me, it all feels like that's the Beatles gone back in time to their roots and having fun together, you know, with the solos trading off and trying to upstage each other without being mean about it. So I absolutely love it. And yes, Paul's hidden track. That's, yeah, first ever hidden track in rock music, which is a bit, you know, typical Beatles music hall, tongue-in-cheek. So I think the Beatles are going to get this one again, 10-9 from me.
Okay, and Tony, take us home.
All right, so I thought it was funny when Todd said that the lyrics don't really matter with New Order sometimes, because in True Faith they actually changed in the second verse several times. Like it says, now that we've grown up together, they're afraid of what they see, but it used to say something about, now that we've grown up together, they all do drugs with me, or something like that. So that's been changed. And then I have another recording from 1993 where they make a reference to Michael Jackson in that lyrical part. So yeah, you're kind of right. The lyrics don't really matter that much, but it's I think it's a great song. It's a great melody. It's catchy. It's another song that was recorded. Actually, this song was just recorded for Substance. It wasn't on any album. But the Beatles and the last 4 songs of this medley, I think they just blow it right out of the water. Golden Slumbers is so good to kind of set that tone, and then Carry That Weight comes in, and it's really, really good. I forgot how good those songs in a row were. And so I gave this one to the Beatles 10-9. I thought it was pretty, although the True Faith is a good song, these 4 together just I thought they just blew it right out of the park.
So we end up with a unanimous win for the Beatles here in round 12. And guys, we have a fight in the books. So before we do a recap, let's move back to Richard for his post-fight analysis and see how that patent-pending numeric scoring system he has, see how it did.
Okay, so the numbers did predict the right winner, and I think throwing a little human factor on my part was also right in that it was much closer than what appeared to be a 12-0 just rout. This was a close fight. It was, if you took the three official scores, you will have 115 to 113 after averaging the scores together. That's basically a 5-3 to 2 fight, which is very close. Could be a complete tie, could be a little bit of a blowout. If you add the unofficial in there, you get a 114 to 113, just a little bit, just slightly closer fight. But if you take the rounds won by the official judges and then add them together and average them, you end up with an 8.67 to 3.33 round fight. That's essentially a 9-3 fight, which is closer to how the numbers predicted. So, in terms of split decision and all of that, it was closer than the numbers looked, but not as close as you might think once you start diving into this. Very interesting fight, two fantastic albums, two great bands. I'm glad we got to do this, and I hope you listeners out there take time, listen to these albums. If you see one of us on social media, ask us for a link to the playlist. Take a listen for yourself. These are great, great, great albums. Go have a listen. Back to you guys.
Yeah, it was close. It was very close. I'm looking at the scorecard right now, and we have a split decision. We have Tony giving it to New Order by actually a bit of a margin. But we have Wes and Todd both giving it to the Beatles. So once again, by a pretty close margin, the Beatles remain undefeated. Abbey Road is still, even going up against the greatest hits album, the undisputed heavyweight champion of Album Fight. So Wes has been going first a lot. Let's have Todd go first. What do you think post-fight here?
Well, I thought it was very interesting. Just looking back at my scores and my notes, you know, you have Beatles, you have Abbey Road, sort of like the last stage of the rocket before it completely burns out. And, you know, it's amazing. It's kind of art for art's sake, but it's beautiful to listen to and to look at. And then it's against sort of the cherry picked best singles from 7 years of a, you know, kind of a genre defining and even genre inventing new wave band, you know, and Abbey Road still holds up pretty well against that, you know, and I don't know if that's because of familiarity or just because it inbuilt prejudices or what, but, you know, it's impressive that New Order does so well against something like a classic, you know. But you know, the thing that struck me was listening to Abbey Road, it really sounds old-fashioned, and New Order sounds like it could have been, you know, released maybe, you know, not too long ago. I wouldn't say yesterday, but, you know, it sounds closer in the timeline, you know. I did the math, and it's sort of like, you know, my son to the Beatles, to this album, like my son born in 2002 to the Beatles, it's kind of like me to like 1933 or something, or like, you know, Beer Barrel Polka was like the #1 song, you know, so it's really old, and it just sounds so different. Like it's influenced a bunch of stuff, and it's kind of in a weird way paler because of that. But anyway, but it's still the Beatles and it's still Abbey Road, so it was quite good.
Yeah, New Order has a lot of influence on today's music, and I don't think people give them a fair shake. Tony, you are the one of the three judges that actually gave this fight to New Order. You and Pete. Pete's from the CompuBox scores. So what's your post-fight thoughts on New Order, at least on your scorecard, de-seating the champ?
So, Mike, on this, I thought that it was important here to understand that, like Todd said, you're cherry picking the greatest hits of a band that, some would say define alternative music in the 80s, and you're putting that up against an album that, yes, it's a great album. It's like he said, also the end of kind of like the end of the era for the Beatles. And I just thought that that there were so many strong New Order songs on this album that it was able to keep up with the ones from the Beatles that I thought just weren't as good or weren't as strong. Abbey Road, and this is taking nothing away from Abbey Road. It's a fantastic album front to back, and this album fight allowed me to go and review it again, maybe a little older and wiser and appreciate it a little bit more. But I think the fact that that Abbey Road was going against, hit after hit after hit after hit from New Order, I think that's what did it in.
Okay. And Wes, you gave this one to the Beatles with a pretty big margin. So what are your post-fight thoughts here?
I actually dragged out my copy of the wonderful Recording the Beatles book for this, because there were a couple of things that I was hearing and I was like wondering, I better check what that is. And just seeing what these guys achieved technically, not just musically, but technically in the world of recording, it's almost like without them, New Order would not have been able to record what they did. On the other hand, it was pretty eye-opening, being introduced properly to New Order, and again, just revisiting Blue Monday, just blowing my mind. And I think it did so well because a lot of those sounds that those guys invented or created are kind of coming back. A lot of producers, a lot of younger producers are sort of being introduced to digital versions of these synths and then going back to the original and stuff. So those sounds are being revisited, which might explain the fact that it did so well, because it is, and why it still sounds so fresh, because those sounds are kind of back in our brain. But then again, the Beatles are just so part of the social fabric. It was a tough fight for anyone to go up against that album. And just watching the little videos that came out with the remasters, George Martin saying that it actually was a happy album, even though there were some struggles down the road. It was a happy album. It was something they wanted to make together, and I think that comes across.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree completely. While we all know that the Beatles were on the verge of breaking up, this album really does seem very cohesive at times throughout, and that only happens when a band is actually enjoying working together. So yeah, absolutely. The Abbey Road was the best way for the Beatles to end their career. And let's not talk about Let It Be, because, I have some strong opinions, and I'm sure everyone else does. We could probably do a whole show on that.
Yeah, Let It Be is kind of a mess. Something I was going to mention is, the other songs that came out of the sessions, out of the Abbey Road sessions, were Ballad of John and Yoko, Old Brown Shoe, Come and Get It, which is that Badfinger hit, and John brought in Cold Turkey, and they rejected it. So it's interesting to think that those songs were floating around and could have been on the album.
Yeah, those are some damn good songs on their own as well. Well, hey, guys, I really, really, truly appreciate you taking time to do the work for this album. This was not an easy fight, and spend a Sunday afternoon / evening for you, Wes, on in a tricky and difficult website this afternoon. Before we sign off, I will do our standard disclaimer, which is Album Fight exists for one reason, and that is to talk about music and introduce listeners to music maybe they haven't heard before. But the format we set up, song v song, round by round, forces us to nitpick and find flaws so that we can find a winner. We love these albums. We love these bands. That is why they're in the ring. And we hope that when you listen, you'll go and actually listen to these albums, listen to other works by these artists, and enjoy music with the rest of us. Thank you so much for taking some time out. I really enjoyed this fight with you guys, and we will chat again soon.